Okay.
All right.
Just sending out this one quote tweet on Perk. All right.
All right. Let's do it. Okay. Your first place Miami Dolphins soundly beaten at Philly 31-17 on Sunday night. Now they host New England this week at Hard Rock Stadium before another big game in 2 weeks when they play the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs in Germany. What's up, Dolphins fans? It's Chris Perkins, your Miami Dolphins columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. That's David Furones, your Sun Sentinel Miami Dolphins writer. As a reminder, you can get this podcast on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcast. So your Dolphins battle injuries and a lopsided penalty count. Do I say they battled the refs? I mean, can I say that? They had their lowest scoring game of the season at Philly. We're going to talk about what that means, whether it'll have a lasting effect, and whether the Dolphins can get back on track this week. As usual, there's a lot going on with the Dolphins. Jalen Ramsey might be back. Let's dive in. All right, Furones. So, tell me about the significance of this Eagles loss in your opinion. The Dolphins lose to another team that made the playoffs in 2022. People don't want to hear this stuff from me. Dolphins 4-8 against teams that made the playoffs in 2022, and 9-3 against teams that didn't make the playoffs in 2022. Worse, the Dolphins are 2-7 on the road against teams that made the playoffs in 2022. So, Furones, does any of that stuff matter going forward, including Sunday's loss to the Eagles?
Well, Perk, they don't want to hear that from you. They want the truth, but they can't handle the truth, is what you're saying here. I read your column, Perk. It was a very good piece, a very strong piece. Anyone watching or listening should make sure to check it out. It was also a very fair piece, I thought. It noted a lot of statistical facts, like you just reeled off here, some of them. So my takeaway from all of it was that this is still indeed a team that hasn't proven it can beat another upper echelon team, but based on a lot of what we've seen, I do believe this team appears likely to be on that trajectory. It's just a natural path of how you get there. We see it a lot in basketball and football as well. You kind of have to lose before you get to winning. I think that happens with a lot of teams. Outside of Magic Johnson winning an NBA Finals as a rookie, Michael Jordan had to go through those Pistons. LeBron James had to take his lumps in his first stint with the Cavaliers before, well, he kind of joined a big three and almost an unbeatable team to do it. Happens a lot in football. You have to sort of get there, lose to a more experienced team, and then get over the top. So I still believe in this group. What's the significance of this game? It's a Week 7 loss on the road against a really good team, one of those proven teams that has just last year went to the Super Bowl, NFC reigning champion, and it was a loss with a lot of your talent out. 14 Pro Bowls between Ramsey, Xavier Howard, Teron Armstead on the sideline. Also without Connor Williams at center, he anchors that offensive line. That's a tough environment for Liam Meikenberg to go into. Jalen Waddle misses chunks of that game. Javon Holland misses some time. Isaiah Wynn, he's now out for weeks, so he goes out early in the game. You're down 3/5 of your offensive line against that defensive front, plus a bunch of calls that didn't go their way. It's something that should keep this team motivated with that narrative that's now out there that they can't beat the top team. So I think it'll pay dividends going forward.
Yeah, I think it will too, Peronas. And look, the future looks bright for this team. I want to emphasize that because, look, once you get Jalen Ramsey and Devon Achane back, this team goes back to being very, very dangerous. So they have had a lot of injury situations. Tua's been out, Armstead's been out. And by the way, let me emphasize that my column looked at a 25 game sample, not a 7 game sample. It wasn't just about this season. It was about the McDaniel era, which, a season and is short of a season and a half. That's not a big sample size, but that's all we've got right now. Under McDaniel, the Dolphins are 14-11. They are -10 in turnover margin. And that's something to me that's also troubling is the -10 turnover margin. And they are one of the most penalized teams last year and the first part of this year. So you've got to help yourself out. And that's kind of one of the things that I tried to allude to in the column is that you've got to score like 30 or more points if you're this offense because of the turnover margin, because of the penalty issue, and because your defense, let's face it, is still growing. So you've got to carry a bigger share of the load. And so that's what this offense needed to do in Philly. Now, look, Philly is an exception. They are an exceptional defense. You were on the road. You did have some major injury problems. Let's see what happens this week against the Patriots, which we're going to talk about our expectations for this game later. And let's see what happens in Kansas City, in Germany against Kansas City.
At Kansas City in Germany.
Yes, exactly. So we'll see what happens. But look, I do think that there is some significance to the Eagles game from the standpoint you would like to see this team beat good teams on the road more consistently. You know, you don't expect that they played 9. You don't expect they're going to be 7-2, but 2-7. You would like to see them 500-ish because that's really what you are on the road. You're 500-ish. The good teams are 500 or a little bit better. So that's really what you would like to see. And then just to kind of wrap up this Eagles thing, Furones, what are your positive takeaways from that game? And I'll go first. I'll tell you that it looks like the pass rush is coming along, right? And we saw the defense create a couple of turnovers. I talk about -10. The Dolphins won the turnover battle 2-1, but we saw Chubb with 2 sacks. We saw the strip sack from the sack on Lane Johnson from Jalen Phillips, and the tip by Cater and the pick 6 by Jerome Baker was a play that the defense made. So even though the defense allowed 31 points, you did score a touchdown. You did get the strip sack, and it looks like Chubb and Phillips with that oblique injury, he gets that sack on Lane Johnson, first one since 2022, right? So that's one of my major positive takeaways from that game.
Yeah, that's definitely one. Beyond that, just the fact that they did fight back from the original 14-point, 2-touchdown hole, 17-3. It looks like it could get out of hand right then and there. And then Dolphins go and score those 2 touchdowns. I mean, they looked like they were about to tie the one time it was still 17-10 when they had the Tyreek Hill drop, and then Cedric Wilson didn't get the face mask call against James Bradbury. Now then they tie it with the pick 6 that follows. But if you also get one of those plays to happen, you could tie, and then the pick 6 ends up giving you the lead, and you have a ton of momentum at that point in the game, as it was. And the Eagles, Jalen Hurts did bounce back from his turnover and then lead them down the field. So, yeah, the fact that they did fight back from the original hole on the road against a really good team, but then, yeah, they did give up those 2 touchdowns later and did not respond after Tua had that interception into the end zone. And finally forcing some turnovers. We see that pass rush going, but it was 3 games that Vic Fangio's defense hadn't forced a turnover. And you mentioned that -10 turnover margin throughout Mike McDaniel's tenure. Okay, a lot of that is Josh Boyer's defense last year, and that it didn't create takeaways after it did, actually, the years prior when it was him and Brian Flores. But then Boyer didn't get it done. Fangio, he's known he can put his players in position to do it, but we hadn't seen it in recent games. So finally, a little bit after Jalen Hurts had those 3 interceptions against the Jets, you got a little bit of that going in this game. And then, that penalty margin, you mentioned that, how penalized this team is. That's something that's still, just to harp back on another point you made earlier, that's still something that's kind of claws at you a little bit, because that game, the problem with the officiating that people have is not the calls that were made against the Dolphins. It seems like all of those were legitimate, but the Eagles never had a call go against them too. So a 10-0 penalty margin, I looked this up, it was only the 7th time that it had happened in NFL history, and none of the teams that were on the wrong side of it in the Super Bowl era ended up winning those games. There were 2 outcomes way back in like the 30s and 40s where a team was able to win despite the turnover margin. Kind of, I guess, like similar to like the 01 Hurricanes, or some of those 80s teams where they could just get penalized all over and it still didn't matter. They were just gonna beat you up. So I guess that was happening back in the day. But these days, there's too much parity. If you lose 10-0 in penalties, it's going to be very difficult to overcome that.
Yeah, and you know what? We're going to talk Patriots later, but what's up to Jason Rico in the chat, to Roger Ullman? Real quick, Furones, Jason Rico brings up a very good point that we'll touch on this now. He says, don't take this game lightly, not a gimme game. Miami needs to bounce back from Philly. New England will try something new defensively. And Roger chimes in and says the Pats are coming off an emotional win, Belichick's 300th. Here's my question to you to kind of get to Jason's point about the Patriots doing something. In the first game, they hold Tyreek to 5 receptions for 40 yards. One of the Dolphins' lowest scoring games of the season. They beat the Patriots on the road 24-17. Much credit for that. But as far as what they might try to do to Tyreek, and especially if Waddle is slowed even a little bit with the back, how big do you think that looms toward the outcome of the game for us?
How big? Sorry,
if the Patriots do something similar to Tyreek, five receptions for 40 yards in game one of this year, how big is that? What are you looking for from Belichick from that standpoint?
Yeah, so I mean, Belichick showed his cards in that game and how he was doing. Now, the element of surprise will be gone. Now it's on Mike McDaniel to come out with his adjustments, unless Bill Belichick just ends up double ahead, 2 steps ahead in the adjustments, and then predicts what Mike McDaniel was in the whole mind game that this can turn into. So, it'll be on him to put Tyreek Hill in positions to succeed against New England, and that'll be a matchup to watch. We know Bill Belichick always looks to take away a team's top target.
Right. And so let's, with that, let's go over to our Patriots segment here. And the question is, what do you want to see from the Dolphins against the Patriots? And really what some of the things I'm looking for, Furones, is you want to see a crisply played, efficient game. I don't worry about the Dolphins at home, especially against a sub-500 team. Now, this is an AFC East rival, so you got to watch out for that because they're gonna know you very, very well. This is a tightly bunched division. Say what you will about the Jets and the Patriots, they've both already beaten Buffalo. So this is a tightly bunched division, and you can't take any of these games lightly. Injuries could be a factor here. We'll see if Lester Cotton is the starter there at left guard for Isaiah Wynn. Maybe some inexperience is a factor. Perry Nickerson at the nickel. Maybe Brandon Jones is starting for Javon Holland. Maybe Nick Needham gets activated. Maybe Jalen Ramsey plays this week. Talk about some of that stuff, Furones, and what are you expecting to see from the Dolphins? What do you want to see from the Dolphins?
Yeah, what I want to see and also what I'm expecting to see is a convincing victory, show that this team is back from the loss. They did after the Buffalo loss, came back. And now, granted, they lost 3-0 in the turnover battle to the Giants in that game that followed, but still to win by 15 points despite that was impressive in every other facet of the game. So get some momentum going against what is truly a weaker opponent. Yes, they are coming off this victory against the Bills, but it's a division opponent. It's always tough, but it's one that you should beat, especially at home when you did already defeat them on the road. So go ahead and make sure you complete that 2-0 season series sweep and get that momentum going before you face the Kansas City Chiefs. Tua's 5-0 against Bill Belichick, has a chance to go improve that to 6-0. So now, does Bill Belichick have something for Tua? Now, because we just see a game where he's got kind of the book on Josh Allen a little bit and was able to fluster him. Now, Allen, he could be up and down, and when he's down, he's really down. He fluctuates so greatly from the best of the best for him, which is usually against the Dolphins, and then from the worst of the worst, which we've seen several times in the turnovers. Hey, even that playoff game against the Dolphins, he looked pretty bad with those 3 turnovers in that one. So I'm looking to see if Belichick finally has something for Tua in this game.
Yeah, and look on the chat, Pete's takes says the real Tua shows up versus good teams. Let me ask you this, Furones, and I'm going to whisper this. Are you concerned that Tua has 6 interceptions already when he had 8 all of last year? And I don't know what his turnovers are. I know that I think a couple of those fumbles the bad snap exchange were statistically given to him. But the interception thing, we know Tua is a high quality Pro Bowl caliber quarterback who is known for his accuracy, right? He's bam, bam, bam. 6 interceptions right now, not even at the halfway point. Is that a concern?
Yeah, it's slightly concerning, but he's also been lighting it up this last game, notwithstanding being held to 216 yards. That was well below what he's been putting up. But everything else has just been so phenomenal, leading the league in passer rating. Actually, I have to check if he's still up there. I believe he is in passer rating. Definitely not passing touchdowns anymore because Kirk Cousins with the Monday night game definitely is now in the lead there. But yeah, just the fact that he's up there, been consistent throughout the season. Again, this last game, sort of notwithstanding, he did have that key interception, 2 guys in the same area. Jalen Waddle, his route. Now, Mike McDaniel, I asked Mike McDaniel about it last time after Chris Collinsworth on the Sunday night broadcast kind of did make a big fuss over the 2 receivers being in the same area. He said, yeah, there is some design in that. They run a lot of plays similar to that where they could sort of attack defenders in close quarters, but when Darius Slay, with a ball hanging that long in the air, that deep, can get off his man and get to where the ball is, then it's problematic. So, maybe something that the Dolphins, while keeping their formula still intact, maybe throw something like that specifically out against future opponents, and especially corners like Darius Slay who can make a play on that kind of ball. But yeah, they pick up things as the season goes on, and Tua should improve on keeping those turnovers down while maintaining that efficiency that we've seen in all other facets of his quarterback play.
Yeah, I want to say what's up to Zovegas75 here in the chat. Furones, let's go to Jalen Ramsey here while we're talking about New England because there is some thought. What's that?
The birthday boy. Happy birthday to Jalen Ramsey.
That's right.
Turns 29 today.
That's right. Happy birthday to Jalen Ramsey.
And could be on track to return on his birthday week.
Yeah, how about that? What do you think is? I'll tell you this. That is potentially huge, to state the obvious, and here's why. Because of the skill that he possesses, number one. Number two, because of his knowledge. But number three, I just think you walk out onto the field with a different level of confidence when you got somebody like Jalen Ramsey on your side, right? It's kind of like walking out there with Tua and Tyreek and McDaniel and Achane and Teron Armstead, and you're looking at the other team like, y'all can't touch us. And I think that this defense, now that we've seen good stuff from Chubb and good stuff from Jalen Phillips, I mean, a small sample size for this season, but it appears things are coming around. And with Christian Wilkins, it appears that his play is definitely getting better the last few weeks. And man, you get Ramsey with this crew, Furones, and Vic Fangio calling the shots. I just think it takes you to a different level. So that is potentially huge. Mike McDaniel said we're really taking this thing one day at a time. He said he didn't want to look into his crystal ball and project anything for this week, but tomorrow we'll get a much better indication. The players are off today. There's no practice. Tomorrow we'll talk to McDaniel. We'll get a better indication, but can you overstate? I mean, Ramsey's not going to be in all-pro form, right, the second he steps on the field, but the importance, the magnitude of this potentially, Furones.
Yeah, definitely, because the secondary we saw, much like the offensive line on Sunday night in Philadelphia, is not the secondary that it will be by the end of the season, and same with the offensive line with those 3 guys out. So Jalen Ramsey is going to be huge in that, allowing Vic Fangio to do some of the things that maybe he had ideas of, that we heard him saying all offseason, that he was even going back to when he took that year off on the sabbatical, some of these ideas that he started having of different coverages, and probably once he got Jalen Ramsey started really getting into some really fine specifics there on things he could do with that type of talent, who has already played in a similar defense, that same style in LA the past several seasons. So now over there, he played a star role where he could, in the secondary, very versatile role where he can not only just be that boundary corner, but He could line up in the nickel. He could maybe like play safety sometimes. He could blitz off in nickel and dime packages and just line up all over the field, cover a tight end if need be. Boy, that would be nice if you have Jalen Ramsey in form against Travis Kelce against the Chiefs in Germany. But from the standpoint of also just getting him a game under him against a team that's not as prolific of a passing attack like the Patriots. Sure, now we've seen Mac Jones got a little bit going against Buffalo and a tough defense there, but so you still have to give him some respect, but it's not the Kansas City Chiefs that the Dolphins will face next week. So if he could get a game under him against this team, then that would be huge before you get a real test against the Chiefs.
Yeah, and let me say this also, when we talk about things that we want to see from the Dolphins against the Patriots, and we know that, look, you're also preparing for the rest of the season. So let's see Jeff Wilson and Chase Claypool in some red zone situations, right? A quiet thing that went under the radar, Braxton Berrios on those returns, I don't think the Dolphins had any worse starting field position than their own 25. And a lot of that was Berrios and those punt and kickoffs return. He did excellent. He did a great job for us. There's really been no room to credit him for that, because we're talking about personnel losses and referee calls and all this kind of stuff. But Berrios did a great job. So tell me about the Claypool Wilson things. Yeah, tell me about those right now. We'll wrap this segment up with that. How potentially big is that for the offense?
Yeah, two debuts for the Dolphins there. So Jeff Wilson makes his season debut with Miami, and then Claypool his Dolphins debut. Wilson got 7 snaps. I have it here. Chase Claypool 4, so very little action. Wilson did not get. He had a reception. Did he have a reception? Or
I think he was targeted.
Targeted at least. He wasn't. Yeah. I don't have it in front of me. He didn't get a rushing attempt, that I know for sure. And then Chase Claypool, just the 4 snaps, didn't get involved in any touches or targets. But Mike McDaniel said he had some packages for him, but ultimately it didn't. And I do it. Yes, he did have a 1 4-yard catch. Jeff Wilson did. Yep. So Mike McDaniel thought he had some packages for him. Ultimately didn't get him into those situations, noted game flow over that. But Chase Claypool, he had a really good block on one Raheem Mostert run, one of the few sizable gains that the Dolphins had on the ground. So that's one way you could earn extra playing time is blocking in the run game and downfield as well. When you have your Tyreek Hills and Jalen Waddles going off for big gains, especially for a Dolphins receiving core that currently has River Craycraft out. And we know River Craycraft is probably one of the better blocking wide receivers, actually maybe the best that the Dolphins have. So that's why he's so vital. So if he can fit that role while Craycraft is out. And also, this receiving core doesn't have Eric Ezukanma in there, and we know Mike McDaniel was using him in that backfield role, getting him involved in some rushing attempts. When he said packages, I started thinking, is that a similar role that McDaniel had thought up for Claypool, is to use it? Because, I mean, he's a physical guy, like we saw on that block, that if he gets the ball in his hands, much like Ezukanma, he's out there giving 100% effort on each one of those totes of the ball. So, where you just use him a few times a game and he just goes all out for those few carries. That could be interesting if that's what McDaniel was sort of hinting at.
Yeah, that could be because Ezukanma, that we saw that package was definitely expanded as far as his carries in the regular season. We didn't see a whole lot of that in training camp, a little bit, but it expanded in the brief regular season snaps that we saw. I know we're running late here on this segment, but there's a couple of things here in the chat. Roger Allman asks, will the Dolphins be smarter than the Bills and travel to Germany early? If I'm not mistaken, you're going to Germany, but I think the Dolphins leave Monday night, correct?
Right, Monday night to get there Tuesday, and then go through a regular practice week Wednesday, Thursday, Friday there in Germany. You can't leave any earlier than that unless you leave right after the New England game from Miami. So I mean, you don't have to be that exaggerated like they do when they're on the road to get back home. So give them a day to, whether it's a victory Monday before traveling. It's going to be you got to get ready for a week out there anyway. So give them a day after that game, so all the focus is on New England this week, and then immediately turn the corner to traveling.
JMac 091675. I like this. First, he says someone said in the locker room after the game that whoever is next on the schedule is going to be facing a very pissed off Dolphins bunch after that pathetically officiated game. I would agree with that. I thought the Dolphins were in a little trouble after Philly lost to the Jets, kind of for that same reason. I don't foresee the Dolphins losing back-to-back games in this situation, especially not to the Patriots at home. Dolphins are going to be hyper-focused. But here's the one that I really like from J-Mac. I can see our Dolphins putting it on the Cheatriots. I love that. Not worried about y'all's so-called trap game. I love the Cheatriots. Are you worried about a potential trap game here, Furones?
No, this should not be a trap game. What trap? The same reason the Eagles were coming off their loss. No, the Dolphins are going to be highly motivated. This is not what a trap game is.
Right.
And it's against a division opponent too. Yeah, no chance.
Yeah, they can't. They cannot overlook New England in this.
Now that 12-point line, that's pretty large for a division game, especially the Patriots coming off a good win too. So, but we'll get to our picks to see if we both have the Dolphins covering that spread.
There's a tease, baby. I like that. All right, Furones, let's talk injuries here for this segment. They're starting to pile up. Is this a concern? And let me ask another question. Is the injury problem actually getting better right now? And I know that's crazy to say with Isaiah Wynn just going down and Javon Holland in protocol, but look, Achane, it looks he can come back like right after the bye, right? So that's imminent. That's soon. He can. Jalen Ramsey looks like he'll be back soon. Jeff Wilson just came back. So let's look at both sides of it. I mean, it looks bad from last week, but overall, what do you think?
Yeah, that is sort of how everyone always looks at injuries. Well, we have a lot of guys out now, but we're going to get them back in the future. Now, it doesn't work that way in the sense that you still have to play games in between those weeks when you get them back. So there is also the risk of losing other players. So there's going to be a natural flow of guys you get back, guys that end up injured. And it's a very physical game of football. So, yeah, now even Javon Holland, sort of an Iron Man of sorts because he plays every game. He's in on every defensive play. So it can happen to anyone. Concussion protocol just on a wacky play where two guys collide in coverage. It's very rare that ends up happening. So even when you take the best care of yourself, the injury bug can still bite you. So now it's Isaiah Wynn on that offensive line. So you really hope you could get Connor Williams back pretty soon. I mean, him and Xavier Howard, if they were questionable in such game time decisions on Sunday night against Philadelphia, then you start to think they probably can. They're probably on the verge of coming back, similar to how Jalen Phillips was on that verge previously, then got onto a snap count, pitch count situation. Now, Connor Williams at center, if he's playing, he's got to play every play. It's not like you can put him on a pitch count there. So you don't want to be switching centers in and out of a game. Definitely not. So, but yeah, the good thing is Jalen Ramsey's on the verge, maybe even this week. Teron Armstead is eligible. So HN after the bye week, and he's do I have that timeline right? There's so many different timelines. HN would be eligible after the bye week, so he even gets an extra week there. Teron Armstead, now while we don't know the situation on him, if he'll need more time, but he is eligible for Kansas City. But if the Dolphins want to rest him there, give him an extra week after the bye, they can do that too.
And what about Nick Needham?
And Nick Needham, he actually, I believe, on the 21-day timeline from return designated to return, then he is now set to come back. I mean, it could be announced today. So, then that's a boost in the secondary. Now, whether he is immediately able to play, that's to be determined because you might activate him just based on the belief that pretty soon here you'll be able to get him in there, and you just need to activate him for the spot and to make sure you don't end up losing him for the year because that 21-day window is running out. But which I think might have been a similar situation with Rob Jones actually, because they did bring him back. They needed that 8th offensive lineman, but in the past he would have been that first left guard up when you have an injury to Isaiah Wynn. So I wonder if he just wasn't ready yet at that point. Now, Lester Cotton, he can hold his own as well. And we've even seen him start a playoff game last year at right guard when Robert Hunt had to kick out to right tackle at Buffalo. So he has that experience too. So he's serviceable there as well. But just injury concerns that are now being alleviated, but while you're still adding some along with it.
Let me throw in a couple of things here. One is not injury related, but it's on my mind. The tight ends. This was the third straight game that there was no reception for a tight end. In two of these three games, such as Philly, the tight end wasn't targeted in the pass game. So this team is 5-1. Offense is going pretty well, right? So I'm just asking you a question. Are we seeing the role of the tight end really go to a blocking tight end? Because you remember Durham Smythe early in the season, I think the first couple of games, he kind of got some targets and some attention, but that's been phased out. Is the tight end going to a completely blocking tight end right now? Especially you get Claypool back, you get Jeff Wilson back, A-Chan will be back. What do you think?
Yeah, so I was going to point to exactly that. Early in the season, I think Smythe had 7 targets in that opener against the Chargers. So it's interesting to see the way it has been phased out in a way. Yeah, we know the tight end is very pivotal in the blocking aspect of the wide zone rushing. And actually, we didn't see the Dolphins run the ball that much against Philly. Now, that's a tough run defense to go up against. So Mike McDaniel is probably looking at that and understanding the Eagles were down a couple safeties. So trying to see if you can attack the secondary a little bit, even though they held their own in that aspect as well. Philly did at home. But yeah, I was expecting maybe we'd see some Julian Hill, a big body. He can go up and get it. We saw it throughout training camp that he could go up and get a ball in the red zone, in the end zone against a smaller defender. So we haven't seen that yet. He's mostly been there as a physical blocker. The murmurs of Chase Claypool maybe getting involved in the tight end play. We haven't seen that yet, and even when we spoke to John Embry not long ago, Claypool hadn't even been introduced to him yet. So so we know that at least has not been a priority at the time when all the fans were clamoring for Claypool at tight end.
So one other thing from the chat, and it kind of gets into what I wanted to talk about. Jason Rico with we have yet to see the Dolphins play complementary football. Want to see the offense and defense show up with no slop. Hoping to see that in the second half of the season. Kind of related, the trade deadline coming up in a week. Do when you talk about complementary football, the defensive line might be the place where they would look to add somebody, right? Depth. Do you see them doing anything at the trade deadline? Are they going to be really active in the next week looking for help somewhere?
Well, yeah, you mentioned complimentary football. I want to see those players telling each other, hey, great job on that play. Great pass rush. Complimentary football.
I see what you did.
God, I was thinking they were giving each other compliments. All right, that was very Mike McDaniel. I've been listening to too many of his press conferences.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, sorry. What was the original question about the trade deadline?
Yeah. Where do you see him looking for help? I would think depth on the interior defensive line, but I mean, as secondary linebacker, O-line. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, with how injury plagued you are on the O-line, then you might look there. You are expected to get all those guys back. In the secondary, yeah, you're already getting the additions of Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, Nick Needham. I think those are the best trade deadline acquisitions that you have going for you is Jalen Ramsey is returning. Yeah, it was an offseason trade, but he's really being brought onto this team, added onto the roster. Now, I would say, up the middle on this defense, the interior of the defensive line, possibly a nose tackle that could get in there with Raekwon Davis, or if he ends up starting over Raekwon Davis and Raekwon Davis is just subbing in and out, just being more fresh for his reps, that could work. We haven't seen much of Brendan Peely, and Deshaun Hand has had to get into that rotation. So if you had another guy in there on the D line, that could help a lot. The pass rush looks great, but any one guy that goes down, well, I mean, because even Emmanuel Ogbah, he's a guy who has been effective this year, and then he only had 3 defensive snaps against the Eagles. So that tells you with Jalen Phillips, Bradley Chubb is getting going, and Andrew Van Ginkel, we've seen what he's done this year, then you really like what you have on the edge. So I wouldn't prioritize that, but Mike McDaniel does say that's his favorite position. So he can never have enough of those guys. And any one guy that goes down in that group, then that leads you to want a little bit more in that group. So yeah, I agree with you on where I'm looking at the up the middle, and maybe the inside linebackers as well. But hey, we just saw Jerome Baker make the big play on a ball that got tipped to him, and David Long has had some strong moments at times too. He was bullying over a blocker one play, tackle for loss another. So you've seen some flashes from him too.
Yeah, Jason Rico said that he hopes that they get a run-stuffing linebacker. So we'll see. But, yeah, I think David Long was having his best game of the season before he collided with Javon Holland there at the late in that game. All right, time for our Furones bonus, baby. Here we go.
Oh, the Furones bonus.
There we go. There we go. All right, Furones. So the Dolphins have been picked as the team for Hard Knocks. Mike McDaniel telling us it was not a organizational decision. So I'm thinking that they were appointed. You know, the NFL has all these criteria. I know for the season opening Hard Knocks, if you have a first-year coach, you don't have to agree to be on the show. And so there's a bunch of criteria like that. If I'm not mistaken, Pittsburgh has never been on it. New England has never been on it. This is the Dolphins' second time on it. They were on it in 2012, Joe Philbin's first year. But this is the mid-season Hard Knocks. Arizona was in it last year. I watched part of it when Kyler Murray got injured. They did a lot of stuff on Budda Baker. I thought it was pretty good. But here's my question to you as the Furones bonus. There's always kind of a lesser-known guy that emerges at some point, whether it's the beginning or the end. Who do you think it could be? Kendall Lamb, I like as a veteran. Robbie Chosen is interesting. A new draftee, Devon Achane, Cam Smith, Channing Tindall from last year. Who do you think? Brandon Peely, Robert Jones. Jones has a great personality. Who do you think? Who are some of the better personalities and some of the best candidates to emerge?
Yeah, Chosen is an interesting one. He just the history he's had coming into this team, and the hairdo and everything. I'm sure he'll attract attention from the NFL Films camera crew. But in reality, I mean, he's been very quiet here. He stays in his lane. He has fun with the guys. But from what I've seen in the locker room, he is just really he keeps to himself and is really quiet. Kendall Lamb is an interesting one that you said. Every time he speaks, he seems so motivated, like he has this fire in his eyes about maintaining himself over 9 NFL seasons, a small school guy, defying the odds as a journeyman in the NFL. He speaks with such pride over how he's been able to do it. And then right now, filling in very well for Teron Armstead at left tackle. As well as you can expect for a backup at that position. It shows why the Dolphins really prioritized him after he joined the team late last season. Brandon Peely is an interesting one because the cameras are going to be following Tua a lot. And then he has that Polynesian connection with Tua. I've seen a couple of times where, you kind of think Tua, all right, he's a star quarterback on the team. Brandon Peely is like one of the last guys on the roster, undrafted rookie. Lately, he's barely been playing, but they kind of do have a connection. I see them interacting a little bit in the locker room the times that we're in there. So that's maybe some of the minutia that these camera crews can end up capturing. As far as some of the personalities, I think of guys like Duke Riley, that he has a lot of fun with the boys in the locker room. Raekwon Davis is actually the same way. Another guy. These are guys you don't hear that much from in interviews. There's not many instances where we have to go to Duke Riley, us in the media, to go talk about the game. But every time he talks to us, he's a lot of fun. We appreciate his time and the effort that he puts forth with us. And Raekwon Davis, he's sort of like a guy that when you put the cameras in front of him, he doesn't show his personality, but he has a lot of personality there that I think if he sort of operates unaware that the cameras from Hard Knocks are around, that the fans will start to see that. But in this locker room, they have a lot of personalities that'll shine. Christian Wilkins, of course, is like that too. It's going to be a lot of the star personalities that people want to see and are more interested in seeing Tyreek Hill, what he's joking about any given week with the team. Mike McDaniel, of course, we already see so much of him, but just kind of get really more of that candid talk that he has with his team, and Jalen Ramsey, of course. So many guys, but yeah, there are also some lower on the roster on the depth chart players that I think fans will get a chance to learn a little bit more of.
Now, this locker room, I've said this is a top 5 locker room in my 30 plus years of being a sports writer. These dudes are absolutely great. Look, I would love Vic Fangio. Just fascinates me. Just kind of the crusty old guy. He's working with young, energetic Mike McDaniel and all these players in their 20s who listen to hip hop. And you got Fangio, the crusty old guy who's 65. I would love to see more of him. And you talk personalities, Jeff Wilson. I mean, here's a dude who's always got a smile on his face. He was just activated. He had that scooter last year that he was riding around in the locker room. And then Jalen Waddle, like, he's a guy who every time we see him in the locker room, he's joking and smiling around, not so much on camera, but a guy who, yeah, he's always kind of in the mix. He's kind of quiet, kind of keeps to himself. But once he gets that smile on his face, which he usually has, and he starts talking, he's a lot of fun. So a lot of candidates on this team for Hard Knocks. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to it. All right, Furones, here we are at the end, baby. It is prediction time. Dolphins, Patriots. I'm going to let you be the leadoff hitter. Who you got?
Ooh, well, it's obvious who I got. Yeah, I'm going to Dolphins, and 30-13 is my score prediction. So yes, there no more need for any spoiler alerts. I do have them covering that 12-point spread, which still seems large, but just a combination of, yes, the Patriots are coming off a strong performance, upset victory against the Buffalo Bills. Which the Dolphins love to see that, because even with the loss in Philadelphia, they maintained their lead in the AFC East, although they could have gone up 2 games, and that would have been huge at this point, especially since you don't have, at this point in time, the tiebreaker over Buffalo. But yeah, I see the Dolphins bouncing back the same way. This is just teams fluctuate week to week. And even last week, they still did have a strong showing coming back from the first 2 touchdown hole. Then you think you're going to get into a back and forth. Tua's driving, and then he ends up throwing that interception. The Eagles go on the long drive going the other way, a couple of tush pushes. And I feel like that score wasn't indicative. 2 touchdowns wasn't really indicative of how close the 2 teams truly played to one another. So I think the Dolphins come out with some fire and have a bounce back win here.
All right. Before I give mine, let's talk about Pete's takes here in the chat, and I want to hear your opinion on this. He says Cedric Wilson needs to be used more, and Tua needs to stop throwing every pass to Hill, where a more balanced offense and spreading around would help. He said Tua isn't doing that, and it's going to get him in trouble. Last week, off the top of my head, let me see if I've got it here. Okay, so 32 passes from Tua. And Tyreek is the target on 15 of them. He ends with 11 receptions for 88 yards. Now, look, we know that Tyreek is pretty much unstoppable. Jalen Waddle is hurting, and Devon Achane is not there. Raheem Mostert is not doing anything. In your opinion, I like going to Tyreek, but I see Pete's point. I think that game was a little bit of an exception. Is this an issue, a major issue moving forward for Furones, or was this kind of an exaggerated situation against Philly?
Well, yeah, because you had Jalen Waddle not on the field for a lot of that game. So I think when both of them are out there, you would see a little bit more of parity in targets, although Tyreek Hill would still get the lion's share there. But, hey, you can't blame a guy for targeting Tyreek Hill. This is Tyreek Hill. He could break a record this season, surpassing 2,000 receiving yards. So I don't fault him for going to Tyreek Hill. Hey, Cedric Wilson, props to him for making a couple big plays down the field. One of them was on a key 3rd and 18, kept the drive going. That I think that one led to points, if I'm not mistaken, or was that the first touchdown? But
I think so.
Yeah, but either way, it was a huge play. And then, boy, Tyreek Hill, his day would have looked even a lot better if he made that catch over the middle right before that face mask that wasn't called on Wilson. Hey, he went right to Cedric Wilson right after that play. So I think that one does not end up officially going down as a target because the penalty went uncalled. Sorry, yeah. So so it did. It just lined up as a target, went incomplete somehow because there was totally legal coverage on the play, according to the officials.
There we go. Right. So, didn't Mike McDaniel say something about legal contact? He made.
That was on the interception on Mostert. So the defender covering him sort of didn't allow him to come back. But I think Mostert had too much momentum going away from him. I don't think he was going to be able to get back to the spot where Slay was. So.
Right. I agree. All right, Furones, I've got the same margin, the same winning margin as you do. I've got Dolphins 34, Patriots 17. Look, I remember from the first game when Tyreek puts out the plea to Dolphins fans to go up to Gillette Stadium and call Mac Jones sorry. He would probably put out the same plea here at Hard Rock Stadium, right? For the Dolphins fans to harass Mac Jones. We'll see what Bill Belichick has planned for Tyreek. Again, 5 receptions for 40 yards in that first game. So, they do have something there. We'll see if Jalen Ramsey returns. I think the Dolphins avoid the trap game situation. I would love to see him get the run game going. I want to see that pass rush continue to surge, but I've got Dolphins 34-17. They'll be 6-1 going into the over to Germany. And let's see here. We Hooked Up Joe has something here on the chat, and I'm going to read it. I haven't
you mean 6-2. 6-2.
Or 6-2. I'm sorry, 6-2. Yeah, my math is way off. Hooked Up Joe says when you look at the real numbers and you see the first wide receiver compared to wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3, we are in line with other teams. We are 4th in targets to top wide receiver, but 10th as compared to wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 total. So the idea that we toss to Hill all the time is actually not really the case any more than other teams, starting wide receiver 1 even less. So that's what Hooked Up Joe has to say. Nice observation. Thank you. Let me ask you our poll question from the chat. Do you plan on watching Hard Knocks this season featuring the Dolphins?
Sorry, what was that? I was just trying to say that Hooked Up Joe is hooked up with all the research there. That was some fantastic statistical analysis.
That is.
He brought to the program.
We got good viewers here. Good viewers. All right, so do you plan on watching Hard Knocks, the in-season Hard Knocks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to have to as part of my job. I think I'm probably going to have to write some stories on it live as soon as these episodes are out. So I try to watch some of the Detroit one when that came out, the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. I did a little bit, but I was just so locked into Dolphins training camp that sometimes I didn't just find the time, and I would always just hear about some of the highlights of what Aaron Rodgers said or did or whatever else, whether it was Method Man appeared on the program or something, any other highlights, their team meeting moments that were pretty cool. But this one I will definitely be tuning in.
Yeah, me too. Unavoidable, part of the job and part of the fun. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody on the chat, lively chat. We always enjoy it. That's David Furones. I'm Chris Perkins. We will see you next week here, noon Tuesday, sunsentinel.com.